Have you ever wanted to make a monster for Along the Leyline? Well, probably not. You probably haven't even heard of this game called Along the Leyline, but I wrote it. It's pretty cool. And I'm going to be talking to you today about how to make monsters for the game specifically and the mechanics involved. All right, let's get into it. So the first thing you need to understand in Along the Leyline is the action economy. Turns are taken as group initiatives. So all of the players are going to go, and then all of the referees' monsters are going to go. And they're not going to be able really to do a lot on the other person's turn, except every single round, every character gets an action and a reaction. They also get a movement, but that's not going to be as important here while we're talking about action economy. What we need to understand is that your monster is going to be doing something on their turn, some kind of action. This should be a big effect, and players are going to be able to respond to that using their reactions. Your monsters, however, are going to be able to respond to the players' actions by using their monster reactions. So you need to think about your monster and how it's going to behave. Is it going to be a defensive monster? If so, is it going to be blocking most of the time, or is it going to want to be dodging the kinds of attacks? And this really is going to flavor your monster. Are they a big beefy guy that's going to be able to take a ton of hits and just tank it out? Or are they really slender and able to kind of dodge and jump around, but once they get hit, they kind of go down quickly? Or maybe they don't go down quickly, but they're still able to dodge a lot. This is something we want to think about while we're designing our monsters. We also want to be thinking about how they are going to be rolling the dice. Oh, goodness. Let's kind of back up. Take a tea break. So if they're going to be using their reactions to be defensive, are they going to be able to do something on top of that? And Along the Leyline, if you have a shield, you can block every single hit in the round. So this is how it works. Whenever somebody is going to attack a monster, let's say Jim the Knight is going to attack Timmy the Goblin. So Jim is going to make an attack, Timmy is gonna block. Whenever Timmy blocks, if Timmy's got a shield, Timmy can block every other hit. Timmy's gonna roll once. Let's say he gets a 3. And Jim the Knight attacks and Timmy blocks, Timmy gets a 4. Takes no damage because the block blocked everything. So once he's rolled that 4, he's going to use it for the rest of the round. So anytime Tim the Goblin is attacked this round, because he's got his shield, he's fortified, that 4 is going to go on all of the attacks. So when Jayla the archer shoots and Jayla gets a 6, because Timmy has already rolled a 4, that's going to be subtracted from the 6, and Timmy's only going to take 2. So blocking with a shield, being able to fortify, is super, super important in Along the Leyline. Particularly, skeletons have this ability, so that makes skeletons really tough to beat. It makes them really annoying. You gotta understand though, that because they've got the shield, they're able to block. It makes them really hard to hit. You may not want to give them a bunch of HP because of that. All right, so now that you're thinking of your monsters, they can block a lot. They can also dodge in the round as well. Evasion, taking the evasion action would allow them to do this. You may want to give your monsters this ability as a reaction. I don't do that because that makes them really, really hard to hit, but you can have them be able to move with scurry. So some monsters, once they dodge, if they successfully dodge, they can also move up to 3 meters. This is useful for getting around multi-attacks. Some characters like Knight Errants can have dual wielding, which allow them to attack if they take the master up to 3 times in a single round. And if they expend their dodge on the first attack and they get hit, well, they're just going to be taking a couple of extra hits, and they don't get to block, they don't get to dodge, they don't get to do anything because they use their reaction on the first one. So by taking this evasive reaction of scurry for your monsters, they can get out of the way for the other attacks if they can dodge the first attack. So it's a way of getting around and surviving a little bit longer against characters that might have multi-attack. Because now that character can't attack again, they've already attacked. They can try to attack somebody else that's close by, but if they don't have range on them, they've just escaped. So those are the 2 big sort of defensive reactions that you can give your monsters. Another thing you can give them is Berserk. This is a class that Berserkers can use, a feat from Berserkers, where if they're attacked, they get to attack right back, right? So they're using their reaction to hit them back while they're being hit. So it's a blow for blow kind of action. Now, Berserkers also have Shrug It Off, which allows them to, if they take a small enough amount of damage, they just ignore it. So they start with 1 from Shrug It Off, but then if they're using Berserk, they can ignore 3 points of damage. Now, if they get 4, they take the full 4, right? So that's just going to be something you have to remember while you're playing the game, that if they're going to be using this Berserk and they have Shrug It Off, that there's going to be an interaction with this sort of small mechanic here. So those are some of the defensive ways that we can respond. But remember, you can also use like Berserk, or you could just give them a attack reaction where they don't have to have any sort of trigger. In Along the Leyline, you can use your reactions whenever they're kind of like instants in Magic the Gathering. You can just say, I'm going to be doing this, and then you do it now, right, in the middle of combat. So you could start the beginning of combat, or you see somebody else attacking, you know that they're being attacked, they can do that reaction at any time if they have the ability to attack as a reaction. This is different from players. Players don't really have this ability to attack without any triggers. This is important. As a referee, you have this responsibility to be managing the table. You get more tools in your toolkit. You get monsters that are more dangerous, and you're supposed to be using them to make a story that is impactful for your players. Are they facing some kind of monster that's ruthless, that's going to be coming at them and relentless in their attacks? Well, then give them a reaction where they can attack. Now understand, the monsters typically only get one reaction. So if they're using their reaction to attack, that means they're sitting ducks for all of the actions where the players are attacking them. That means that you can give them a lot of HP, they can take a lot of hits maybe you don't give them a lot of HP, they just come in, they make a bunch of attacks, the players freak out, right, and then they're out of there. But you want to understand, right, how you want to use this tool as a storytelling device, right? We're not just going to come in here and say all the players are dead. Like, that's boring. No, you want to tell a story, have these monsters, have your heroes fight with these monsters. Maybe the monsters win, maybe the monsters lose and the heroes win. We don't know, but we don't want to just go in and slog them all. I understand that might be the game that you want to play. If it is, be sure to tell your players this is what's going to happen. I'm just going to like destroy you all. Play a game like Call of Cthulhu. Play a game like Mothership where people know their characters are going to die. Maybe not Along the Leyline, right? That's not really the ethos of the game. Okay, long rant. What I'm trying to say here is, think about how you want your characters, your monsters, to be telling the story. What kind of story do you want these monsters to tell, and try to reflect that in the mechanics? Okay, now let's just talk about the attacks themselves. You don't want to give your monsters 50 different attacks. They're not going to be able to attack 50 different times in this one night. So instead, give them like 2 or 3 common attacks that they're going to be using. And then have those monsters do that attack at least a couple of times. So the way that Along the Leyline is designed is, ideally you're going to be going through combat. It's going to take like 4 rounds in a typical combat. If something hasn't changed in 4 rounds, it gets boring as you play. This is just my experience, and it just becomes a slog. We don't want it to become a slog. Slogs are no fun for anybody. That's not the game we're going for here. What we're trying to do is make the action intense. And so you want to give your monsters just a couple of actions that they're likely to do, because they're not going to be around long enough to do all those other actions. So think of a couple of cool things you want your monsters to do and have them as their actions. You need to decide whether it's in melee, or if it's ranged, or if it's some kind of magical effect. If it's melee, they can only hit them if they're like in 1 meter, or maybe up to 3 meters. That's it. They're not going to be going from 20 meters away. Ranged, it's about 20 meters as a stone's throw in Along the Leyline, and then I think it's like 120 for a bow shot. So you want to put somewhere in there for the range of these monsters. If you're just playing in Theater of the Mind, they're going to use the range if they're in range, and they're going to use melee if they're close. All right, so that's the first thing you need to do, is figure out, are they going to be doing a melee, or the range, or one of each? Then you need to think about what kind of damage it's going to be. Is it a claw attack? Maybe that's slashing. Is it a bite? That's piercing. Is it a fist to the face? That's bludgeoning. Or maybe they're some kind of like fire demon and it deals fire damage. Or maybe they're shooting water out of their mouths like a water gun, and that's going to be water damage. Think about what kind of damage you want it to be. Once you've got the flavor of whether it's melee or ranged, and you know the type of damage that you want to use, you want to think of some kind of critical hit effect. And this is going to be super unique to your monster. This is going to be like the defining trait. Critical hits might not show up. That's okay if they don't. But when they do, you want it to be like this big crescendo, this big splash, this sudden surprise of action. So being grappled by the monster, that's a good thing to do. Getting super poisoned by the monster, having body saves drops, or spirit saves, or mind saves, maybe even death saves if you want to make a really scary monster. Okay, it's got to be some big effect. Maybe they get restrained or cuffed. Maybe they lose some mind points. Have some kind of big effect for your monster so that it's splashy at the table. Maybe they have some kind of like radiating effect that goes out. Like if you're playing with zombies and you have the flesh bag, when they die, they do a death pop, which like sprays like stuff all around them, like poison damage for everybody that's around them because they explode when they die. So maybe you can give them one of those for their abilities, or have that be a critical hit effect. I haven't really talked about abilities, so I suppose we should do that now. Abilities are special things that your monster can do all the time. These might be gaining resistances to certain kinds of attacks. These might be gaining advantage on grappling checks. Like if they're a grappler, they have advantage on grappling, like the water alami. And so the water alami, because they're water, they can just grab people. And so they have advantage, they've got grappler. And anybody who's trying to escape would have disadvantage against them because they're so good at grappling. This is also true for hobgoblins because they like to wrestle. So having those feats also flavors your monster. Maybe they're able to climb, maybe they're able to breathe underwater, maybe they're able to see in the dark. Giving them these kinds of abilities also helps separate your monsters. So we've got the reactions down, we've got their actions down, we've got some of their abilities down, things that are unique for them. Now we want to be thinking about some of their resistances, some of their vulnerabilities, and maybe if they have immunities of any kind. So thinking about zombies in particular, they're mindless. So because they're mindless, psychic damage is not going to do anything to them because they don't have a mind. They're not going to lose mind points. They're not going to fail mind saves because they don't have anything there to lose. So having them as mindless also would grant them immunity to psychic damage. You also probably are going to have immunity if you're a fire spirit to fire damage or a water spirit to water damage. So think about your monsters and what they might have resistances or immunities to. If you've got like some kind of rhinoceros and they've got a thick hide, maybe they're resistant to slashing damage or piercing damage, probably piercing damage because it's more like leather. Or maybe if there's some kind of like animated armor, they're going to have resistance to piercing and slashing because that's what plate mail has. Or maybe you're going to equip your monsters with these items. You can do that too, which is the next thing we should talk about. What kind of equipment does your monster have? And what kind of loot is your character going to pull from these monsters? So if there's some kind of humanoid, they're probably going to be carrying around some cash, a little bit of gold, somewhere like 1d4 to 1d20 of gold. If they're really, really wealthy, maybe 1d100, but that's a lot because you got to remember gold in Along the Leyline is experience. So now that we've thought about gold, just give them a little bit of gold, a little bit of hooray, you killed the monster, you get to loot it. And then any kind of items they're going to have. If they're going to be attacking with weapons, those should be equipment. If they've got some kind of resistances because of armor, that should also be equipment. If they've got some kind of magic item, maybe they have a spell scroll, maybe they have a magic weapon. But understand, remember, the players can pull these off of the monsters. So if you don't want the players to have access to those magic weapons, don't put them on the monster because they're going to be able to loot the body when the monsters die. So that's only fair. Now that you've got their equipment figured out, what you can do is think about what kind of random things the monster might have on them. This is going to make them different so that if you kill 5 goblins, it's not the same thing every time. Maybe they find something unique on this one goblin, like a love letter or a rag that smells like lavender. You know, some kind of unique and interesting item that they could find. It doesn't necessarily have to be super magical or super like bonus of like XP or gold. It could just be flavorful and full of lore. So this is another way that you can tell the story of your monster in the kinds of loot that you can pull off the monster. Particularly for beasts, things that don't have equipment, you want to give things like body parts, like the hide from the rhinoceros. You want to give maybe teeth or horns. Or for my bestiary, I put a heart in all of the monsters, and the monster heart, when you eat it, gives some kind of magical effect that lasts about a week or less. So now that you've got your loot table figured out, we need to think about what might happen outside of this. We've got a couple of different things. Your players could cause the monster to make saving throws. And if they're going to be making saving throws, you need to be thinking about the 4 different kinds of saves. You've got body saves, you've got mind saves, you've got spirit saves, and you've got death saves. Body saves are their physical fortitude. How much is this monster just like resilient and tough? The higher you go, the harder it is going to take them out. D4, that's going to drop really quickly because saves drop on 1, 2, or 3. So if they have a D4, they're very frail. If they've got a D8, they're pretty buff. If they have a D12, they're like Colossus strong, like amazing. So D6 is normal. That's going to be like a normal humanoid where they're at. So hopefully that gives you some guidelines of where to go for each of these saving throws. For mind saves, it's about the same, except instead of physical resilience, it's mental resilience. How tough are you here? And then for spirits saves, it's not mental or physical resilience, it's heart resilience, right? How much are they willing to stick it out and be brave? And then death saves are like, how much are they willing to cling on to life, right? You can imagine a very frail character still wanting to cling on to life, even though their body's broken, maybe their mind's out of it, maybe their spirit's broken too, but they still desire to live. That's the death save. Death saves are particularly important if you want to have some kind of legendary boss monster. For Along the Leyline, there's a special feat that monsters can get called Legendary Death. If they've got Legendary Death, when their HP reaches 0, they keep fighting because we want an epic battle for this boss. You don't want a one hit, now they're dead. That would be awful, right? So to mitigate that from happening, we don't want to like mitigate your guys did something cool, like the players were able to come in and just bash this bad guy. So their HP is going to go to 0. Now they're going to be making a death save every single time they're hit and every single round until they die. That is the legendary death. So even though they've been wiped out, they're still clinging on to life. They're still going to fight it out. So dragons, you'll notice they've got a really high death save in Along the Leyline, and they have legendary death because dragons are supposed to be terrifying and epic battles. All right, now we've talked about the saving throws. You want to set them at D6 for normal, D4 is for weak, D8 for strong, and then above that is like amazing. We want to think about now all of the other things that could happen. Maybe the players want to parlay with the monsters. Well, that means they're going to need some kind of social skills to interact with them. Things like deception. Maybe they also are going to use diplomacy to try to get things from the players. So anytime the monsters want to do some sort of social check, they need that skill. And same thing for all of the other skills. If they want to do some kind of other attack that's not listed on the stat block, if they want to be able to maybe cast magic because they picked up or stole a magic item from one of your players and they want to use it, we need some way of using this. So there is on the stat sheet a CASED score. That stands for, so that's CASED for combat, arcana, social, environmental, and defense. So if your monster is going to be doing something with combat that's not listed on their stat block, they're going to use that die for combat. So a D6 maybe. For Arcana, this same thing. If they're going to be casting spells, using magic, that's all going to be their Arcana skill. S is for social. So anytime they're going to be parlaying, doing diplomacy, trying to deceive them, that is for social. Environmental skill, this would be like athletics, acrobatics, stealth checks, things that the monsters might be trying to get an edge on the players by doing something or interacting with the environment. That's going to be environmental skills. And then D is for defense, defensive skills. D is for defense. And that is going to be anytime they're going to be doing that something that's not on their reactions. Like if they want to block, but they don't have a specifically list out block skill, that's what they're going to use the defense die for. So that should give you a good enough idea about what these monsters are capable of doing. So the case score is important. Don't forget to include it. And if you do, just use D6s for all of them and you'll be all right. Okay, so let's review everything. We've got one last part. We've got to think about their HP and MP. Their HP is how many hits they can take until they die, and the MP is how many spells they can fail before dying, or how many like barrages from the enemy, because there are some spells that will pull out your mind force, right? Your mind points. So you want to think about the HP that your monsters have and the MP. So I think that's pretty straightforward, though. I don't think I need to explain that, except that the normal character Along the Leyline, the PC is going to have about 20 HP. And so they're also going to be able to deal, starting out, just like D6, somewhere between D6 and D8 damage every round. So they're going to be dealing somewhere between 3 and 5 damage each round, each player. And so if you've got a party of 4, that's going to be like 20 points of damage each round. So you want to think about that. That means they need about 20 HP if they're going to be captains. If you don't know what I'm talking about, like mooks and captains and mini bosses and bosses, you can watch my other video about that where I go over all of those categories. But if you're going to be giving them as mini bosses, give them more HP. If you want them to last about 4 rounds on their own, they're going to need about 80 HP just to last. And that's for beginning level characters. As the characters level up, they're going to need even more HP to last around 4 rounds. And that's kind of your goal for each of these monsters. They need to last about 4 rounds. Okay, we've talked about HP and MP and how much you need to give. We've talked about the cased scores so that you kind of know what to do and you can improvise on the fly. We talked about equipment. We talked about loot. We talked about saving throws. We talked about special abilities, and we talked about actions and reactions. You want to be thinking about your monsters as a whole and what kind of flavor they're going to be giving, and use the monster stats to tell the story of your monster. Well, I hope this gives you a good enough guideline to kind of start making your own monsters mechanically in Along the Leyline. If you do make some monsters, please shout me out. I do want to look at them. I would really that would make me feel really happy. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope all of your games are full of dread and laughter.